One. Well, g'day, folks, and welcome to the Jive Talking Garage with Jules Knight. We've got my good friend David Sweeney joining us today on our chatcast, our podcast for Jive Talking Garage. For those that don't know David, he's a motocross personality. He's been in the army. He is like me from the perspective of has worked in the financial markets for a long period of time and also enjoys quirky vehicles. So, hello, David.
G'day, Jules. Thank you for inviting me to come along and maybe, I don't know, do something more than just our rather long-reaching chats over the last 20 years.
No, that's fine. Now, something's happened because you've gone to a black screen that's just got Dave's written on it. So, there we go. That's better. Now I can see you. No, that's fine. That's fine. So, where should we kick? Now, I know that you say, "Oh, look, I don't really have any interesting vehicles or whatever." But let's talk about where you were in motocross, because I know that you were quite successful in motocross.
I was very, very, very ordinary. I just happened to not be able to better at not falling off.
Excellent. What, than the other guys? Or so what were you, the Stephen Bradbury? Or?
Motocross wise, I was extremely ordinary. And I'd love to say that it was through lack of resource, but it was actually just a general lack of skill and incredible fearlessness about what people that really move on with that sport, the way mentally they can approach that, and then pure freak behavior.
Well, in Paddington in the 80s, I lived next to a go-kart champion, and you could say he had the words that you used then. He had fearlessness. He had no thought of danger. There was no holding back because of potential injury or anything like that.
And the people that I look to as from a motocross perspective, and that I always followed, were the people that actually, if you line up, or if you go for a social ride in off-road, the last person that you want riding with you is someone who is fearless. You actually want people that can, calculate risk very quickly in their head. I look to people in the freestyle world, such as Robbie Madison, an Australian from Nowra, who could ride anything, but his actual skill is being able to calculate risk very quickly.
Yeah.
There are others that have, sometimes ambition gets in the way of ability, but it really is that instantaneous risk calculation that you can't teach. For the life of me, can't figure out how people do it. From a motorcycle world, you look at people like Valentino Rossi, who does things that are just astounding. You look at Michael Schumacher, who mentally could adjust to situations. I guess the one from a motorcycling and off-road in particular is that there is no such thing. Every time you go around a motocross track or you go around any off-road riding, the track isn't the same the next time you get there.
Yes.
It has visibly changed with more ruts, with the variability changes every time you go around. And I was never any good at that. I couldn't.
What, the anticipation or the remembering where things are in the corner, or what the changes were?
Well, the problem is that the corner or the track or the jump is never the same the next time you get there.
Yeah.
So if you think about a Formula One car that's going around, and the track really doesn't change. Whereas on a motocross track, you can have ruts deeper than King Kong's crack appear in a matter of minutes. So the next time you go round and you're doing 20 laps, every time, the 20 times you go around, the entire track has changed.
Yes.
I could never adjust on the fly to it,
Yeah.
which is really a differentiator. When you see off-road riders that are at the top of their game, they can adjust to the track fundamentally, like changing every time they get there. Every 3 to 4 minutes, they see a different track to where they were. Yeah, part of I've never been able to get my head around it. And hence it's, I guess, yeah, as you said, you need to just have an incredible faith in your ability that you're going to survive.
David, what type of bikes were you racing?
I was always and even then by racing it, they were I was 252 stroke.
Yeah.
Yes, I am that old. In my incredibly short motocross time, I was 252 stroke, and then in my, I'm too old for this, riding 250, then 454 strokes in the really amateur enduro world.
Yeah. And what are we talking? Honda, Suzuki,
I
Kawasaki?
predominantly rode Yamaha.
Yamaha. Okay.
And
how do you, like, I love Yamahas, right? We've had Yamaha in the family. The outboards that I've bought for my boat are Yamaha because I really like their engineering. Like, my boat sounds like a sewing machine when you start it up. Did that type of engineering translate to the bike world with what their product was with that?
So when motocross changed really from being a two-stroke world to four-stroke, when the high revving four strokes, the first one was the YZ400, right, and then the YZ426. Yamaha really pioneered that. They were the first to release and I still remember being a spectator at the indoor supercross in Melbourne when, as a demonstration, a rider rode a YZ400 four-stroke around the supercross track, and sitting there going, that is, a four-stroke cannot do that. It was such a fundamental engineering change. Like, it was absolutely astounding, and it changed the entire way motocross and supercross run now, that everything is four-stroke. And the way they rev and the way you can ride them, they are a lot easier to ride. They go damn quick.
Yeah.
The trade-off is, though, that any idiot can maintain a two-stroke. Maintaining a four-stroke just costs. You've got valves and shims and everything else. But Yamaha were really that transition time where I was around from 252 strokes to the 254 strokes, or more so the 400, YZ400. The YZ400, and then the next year, the YZ426, changed motocross and supercross forever, and enduro forever. No one else was making anything of its ilk. They absolutely dominated that world and changed the way the sport works. The pinnacle of motocross was 252 stroke. It's overnight, or probably within 6 months, every single rule changed in the entire world of motocross, that 454 stroke was now the pinnacle. If you think about the change in MotoGP from 500 two-strokes to the more open class 800 that we're at now, is reflective of that. And it happened, and it was only Yamaha that had the product. The next group that came along with the product were KTM. And I was lucky growing up in Central Victoria and living in Central Victoria that we had a two motorcycle dealerships in the town, and one was Yamaha and the other one was KTM. So was able to get access and to those products, and that put me in good stead then to work with other riders because they were having difficulty getting the bikes.
Yeah.
Whereas in Central Victoria, in Bendigo, you had the Yamaha dealer and you had ABS Motorcycles, who were a major KTM dealer. So I guess that's why I was there at that cutover from 2-stroke to 4-stroke.
Yeah.
And still young enough to go, I can make that transition. Was still never any good at it. I'd love to say I was a champion or anything else. Part of the only reason I was really there is I could get on, hang on, and I don't have the bravery gene, so I wasn't going to fall off.
Yeah, well, there's a difference between the bravery gene and the smart gene. Let's just put it that way.
Look, there's only a struck match between bravery and stupidity. We all know that.
Yes, yeah. Well, I'm not going there, but anyway. Now, look, what I was going to say was we've got something else in common besides all the other things that we generally talk about, and one of them is military. Now, the first truck that I ever drove was actually a World War II Studebaker 6-wheel drive 6x6 troop carrier. Now, I know you've been in the army, and we've shared a beer and talked about that under the bridge of the Yarra. Now, what sort of vehicles would you be in the army, or drive, or be a passenger, or have to go and check out, or do something in? Because as Joe Public, we don't see that.
I got dumb lucky in the army. I joined the Army Reserve as part of Pay Corps.
Yeah.
As part of my role was to transition the military's payroll systems to a new system, and then work on the military's new accounting, or similar to a cost center accounting system.
Yeah.
One of the good things about that was I got to go to a lot of places, like a lot of different units, who would all take great pride in showing the visitor their toys. So from working with a transport squadron for a while, in their transition, got to be involved with the Series 3 Land Rovers.
Yep.
And the Unimogs and the Mac 20 tonners, and the fuel tankers, right through to spending one of the most incredible weeks of my life with the School of Armour at Puckapunyal, and getting to go and be a passenger in a Leopard tank at full speed.
What's that like?
I think it was probably the most scared I've ever been in a vehicle. The noise and what is going on around you, and the fact that you have absolutely no vision of where you're going, what's going to happen. And really at the time, the only instruction I was really given was, do not let go of those 2 bars you're hanging on to.
Gotcha.
Because one of the great games was, if there's a newbie in there that you don't care about, they would get going as fast as they possibly could and change direction at 90 degrees and see exactly how many dints they could put in your head. So it was the only instruction. I found the idea of moving at speed and not having any control and not having any line of sight of what was going on terrifying. I had the same experience with one of being in the back of an armored personnel carrier and doing roughly the same thing. The idea that you can't see and you don't have any input and you are getting thrown around was odd. So I think for mine though, and I also got to ride in the early model Bushmaster, and about 3 years ago, I got to ride in one of the modern Bushmasters, and I was absolutely astounded at the difference in those, going from a test unit that was built and designed and built in Bendigo by the Talus group, through to the about 3 years ago, got to go for a ride in what is more the current model, and could not believe what was there. For mine, the most interesting thing about all the vehicles that I have been in the Army was the chance to do things that you just cannot do in a civilian world with a vehicle, i.e. take a Unimog and see exactly how deeply you can bog it and then recover it out of, even riding in the Leopards was still a highlight. The APCs, just the raw power and what they can do is amazing. But for mine, it was what you can do with a Series 3 Land Rover with an Isuzu motor in it. And just having the chance to learn what vehicles can do and what you can do with a vehicle. Like, I'd challenge pretty much anyone to say, I've deliberately bogged a truck as deeply as I can and tried to recover it. For mine, that was in the Army. And that's been, for me, as not a confident driver, the training that was through that process, learning. I didn't have to learn how to be a mechanic or anything else, but I got to learn so much about what a vehicle can do and what you can do with a vehicle.
No, that makes sense.
I would recommend it to anyone if you get the chance. And got to do a lot of that also at the Army's Proving Ground at Monagita here in Victoria, which has those things you see on videos of exactly how steep can this vehicle go. How fast can it go around a corner? That was my biggest experience. So yeah, the Army for mine was just a great opportunity to do things with vehicles and have fantastic instruction on just things to do and not to do.
Yes.
Simple things like, okay, so you've got a snatch strap. Do not stand there. No.
And that's simple things. That's really simple. And things can and will go wrong. I've seen it, particularly as you're having a power station unit dragged up a beach with steel cables, and the steel cable breaks and takes somebody's cheek with it.
Yeah.
So I get
when
it.
The Unimog under the helicopter starts spinning and they cut it loose. Yeah. They don't.
Larry Perkins has got a Unimog, actually.
Correct. He's got a civilian Unimog done out. He supports Daryl Beattie's off-road tours through the Simpson and such every now and then. It's very flash.
And I think he also designed the overdrive for them as well, and that's marketed worldwide from the design that came out of his head during the course of a meeting. I think he was talking to them and complaining is not the right word, but discussing the lack of fuel economy on it, and said, well, if you had an overdrive or if you had this or that, and they've gone, well, you can't have one, and he's gone, well, yes, you can, and then just jumped up and put his engineer hat on and drew it on a whiteboard, and they've gone, oh, well, that's simple. Yes.
For mine, the beauty of the Unimog is a monkey could drive one.
Okay.
They are so, even though they are
they're an elephant. They're an elephant on wheels.
Yeah, but it is very intuitive the way it works and the way you change into different configurations, etc. So the idea of an overdrive may be great from what I've seen of military driving. It's got to be able to hack getting it's got to be able to just get belted.
Yeah. Now, if we can change gears for a moment, let's talk about.
We going down to third, or we going up to sixth?
I beg your pardon?
Are we going down to third, or are we coming up to sixth?
I don't,
Pick a
it
gear,
doesn't
any
bother
gear.
me. Either way is fine. But I was going to talk about David's cars and not necessarily Volvos either, because you're not John Bowden or Francevic. So you know, what
So,
special things have you had or wanted to have or wanted to design or talk to people about that would be of interest to my guys? Well, speaking of which, you're one of my guys too. So because you're a member of Jive Talking Garage.
yeah. I didn't have a car until quite late. Like I didn't, even though I lived in the country and I got a license at 18 years old, I didn't really have a car, and it was an XD Falcon that had done 1,000,000 kilometers.
Yep.
Was my first car, and I was so proud of it. And we used to call it, like, it was so horrible, everyone loved it.
Yeah.
The car, I have a long track record in motorcycling of buying and building motorcycles that are fairly inappropriate or just concept style. So things like taking a 500cc two-stroke racing engine and putting it in a modern bike and having it built that way. Building, so owning one of the, at the time, only two-wheel drive motorcycles, off-road motorcycles called a Christini all-wheel drive. Being one of the few people that ever had one, and you can still buy them, I think. But and then creating inappropriateness in bikes. And over the years, I've wanted to take that into the car world. And one of the ones that I've always lusted after is the inappropriate use of historic products. And that, for me, manifests as taking the ultimate tribal sort of car that people love, a Rolls Royce, and doing something stupid with it. And for mine, I want a Rolls Royce Ute. Now, for a number of years, I have sort of thought about it, worked on it, and every time the planets start to align and I find the right people to start design or work and everything else, just something in my life changes. And I haven't, so it's now back on the radar. I've had informal chats with a couple of builders about what would you do.
Yeah.
It's been really interesting, the response. One builder was a bit hesitant, and the reason is that apparently people that own Rolls Royces, particularly older ones, can get a little bit nasty about modifying them.
Yeah.
There can be blowback, or just hate from, what's a hate from a Rolls Royce person? Oh my God, I'll throw my umbrella at you. I don't know.
Golf clubs.
So so the Rolls Royce thing has always been on the radar. One of the other builders has suggested something a little bit different, which is, rather than be hung up on Rolls, would you consider Bentley, or would you consider something equally as inappropriate? And that is my latest distraction that I'm thinking, and I'd be curious on your opinion.
Well,
and you've got to remember, this is for complete stupidity.
Yeah, look,
look,
you're the sort of fellow that tests the status quo, and it doesn't matter whether we're doing first for something or not. And you and I, as far as financial trading, have actually done that in what we've done in the markets together. And for people that don't know, David and I were counterparts in the markets and became quite good friends because of it.
And I'll quickly throw it out to anyone that's watching it. What's a good in it? Like, this is something that I've wanted to do for a long time. And it's also something that leads on, that would be a secondary question to this, is I've also recently found out the resto mod market.
Yeah, sure.
Which is very much up the alley of how for your viewers, how modernized would you allow one of your vehicles to become?
Look, that's a really good question. Let me answer that from a Holden perspective. Customizing Holden started off early, and it sort of was the next step from hot rods originally. Let's just say, people being in World War II, coming out, getting experience and being able to work on machinery, and then they're able to get cars and do something with it, and then they have kids, and kids are able to get older cars from before the war and then hot them up and put V8 engines in them and modern wheels and all that sort of thing. Now, if I can just take a moment, there is one supremely good customization called Jigsaw that came out in 1986. And the reason I remember it is because I was the first person to scrutineer it. The workmanship is absolutely out of this world. Standard is comparable anywhere. It is the design of the car with, for instance, the FJ headlights utilizing JD Camera. More radiusing done on all of the panels. Audi parts being introduced to it. Falcon paneling and inserts. Manufactured boot scoops. It's all things that blow people's mind from the perspective of that shouldn't be there. And folks, for instance, that own an FJ, when it comes time to sell it, they're happy to sell pretty much provided the buyer is actually going to keep it intact and not cut it up. Whereas if somebody is going to take a stocky and totally modify it, well, then they got a problem.
Meet Dave's Rolls-Royce Ute problem.
I think the seller's got a problem.
Yeah, look, as we all know, money talks.
Well, I saw one today of a Mustang Ute, and I've got to say it looked odd.
Yeah, and look, none of us are really going to sink that low to own a Mustang.
Now, be nice. Be nice.
Hey, that's a big comment from a guy who owns 2 Volvos, the natural enemy of the motorcyclist.
Kind. Yeah, no, that's okay. So besides the Rolls, what else were you thinking?
Well, the Rolls is really probably as far as I can go at the moment. My wife has has basically said, look, you need to do something dumb. You haven't done anything different for a couple of years now.
Okay.
Yeah. Since the infamous desert sleds, KTM desert sleds I built for off-road, for desert racing. So I haven't done anything dumb for a while. And I was talking to the Rolls-Royce Ute and sort of bring that back to the table. And she went, part of the problem at the moment is we don't have any off-street parking. We park on the street. And she's gone, if you leave that here in Port Melbourne, it's going to be gone or trashed in about 2 days. The other thing she said was, if you're going to do it, make it really dumb. And I thought I was leading the dumbness pack at Rolls-Royce. So hence, if your viewers would like to comment, I mucked around with the idea of what would happen if you used a Lamborghini. And did not realize, this is how bad my car knowledge is. I didn't realize that a Lamborghini's engine was in the back.
Yes.
I did not know. They're not my. And so when I brought it up, one of my friends who's not even that heavily into cars went, slight logistics issue. So yeah, I'm looking for something dumb. Unfortunately, the BMW thing was done by Stuart Appleby.
Right.
He took a BMW M5 and turned it into a Ute. I've always heard these stories of people having Rolls-Royce Utes historically, but I've never actually seen one, so hence it still resonates.
Sure.
The other thing I saw that sort of Meg, my wife, was toying with was there's a famous photo in Sydney of someone that owns a Lamborghini that put a tow bar on it and is towing a dodgy 6x4 trailer behind it with 3 hay bales and a goat.
Excellent.
And I went,
well, you've got to be able to transport a goat, David.
Yeah, it's worth Googling Lamborghini with a trailer just to see the dude has a $500,000 Lamborghini and a 6x4 trailer that looks like it's about to fall apart at the first bump. And he's gone to the trouble of having professionally fitted a tow bar and the electrics that you can see very clearly it's plugged in with operational tail lights and just who?
Yes.
I want to be that guy.
Yes. No, I like the sound of it.
I've always been that with motorcycles, been that guy who's got that weird thing or built that weird thing. I want to do that with cars. The engineering for me, as you said, the quality of the engineering and what you do for mine more is the most critical bit, which means I have to get the best. And that costs big dollars.
Yeah, no,
and what would you? And I mean, I would be. There's more tribalism in cars than there is in motorcycles.
Yeah.
But you know, I would challenge you if I went and bought an FJ or whatever and took to it with a saw. You know.
Yeah, go on.
I can guarantee you wouldn't be giggling.
Well, I've seen it, and the guy that's done it the most successfully is a very good friend of mine. He actually was my panel beater and spray painted my Mustang. And normally when I'm painting, he's trying to wrestle the gun out of my hand. So, yeah, look, I'm used to seeing a vehicle that has been customized, but customized well. So it boils down to this. Even if something is not your cup of tea, you have to appreciate when things are done well.
But does that then
that's
lead
how I
to the
view
question of you're happy enough with the mod as long as you can't see it? And I'm thinking about the move from if someone
I'm always looking
and discs in.
Yeah, what I was going to say is I'm happy to see how the mod was done, and I'm interested to see how the mod was done because I want to look at the standard of workmanship and the brain power and the execution that's gone into actually doing the job. That's what's interesting.
For mine, that is like with bikes and everything else that I've done over the years. That's been the interesting thing, but it's trying to work with the Rolls-Royce thing and everything else. For mine, it's been really interesting to note the way tribalism in cars is a lot stronger than in motorcycles. Really, in motorcycles, you can trim it down to off-road, you're on-road. Do you ride a real bike or do you ride a Harley?
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, look, Jive Talking Garage, there's sort of the heart of it's Holden. However, it is trilingual from the perspective of, we're happy to look at Holden, we're happy to look at Falcon, and we're happy to look at Mopar. And each of those individual groups would be happy to look at only themselves, I'm sure. But it's a reflection because it's a reflection.
So far has been the visuals of assembling Citrons in Moorabbin in Melbourne.
Yeah, I know. But the thing is, I am a reflection of my dad because he started off with Holdens and went to Valiants for 20 years and then went to Ford for 30 years. So I'm reflecting that in what we're doing, but I like quirky. So if I see something quirky, which is Citrons being assembled in Moorabbin alongside with any other cars, and I never knew that, or, Mowbray Park or Valiants or Holdens or Woodville or Fisherman's Bend or anything like that, or what's happening in Wickham Street, Brisbane with the factory.
I live in Fisherman's Bend. It's
yep. I know that.
that way.
I know that. You know, you look at that beautiful old building.
Yeah, what I like about the Jive thing is the fact that, as you said, when you were first talking to me about it and you were saying, hey, I was concerned that it was just, okay, you are this very specific area of Holden's history or whatever. What I really like is that there are these weird, quirky, you know, aspects to it where I go, hang on a minute, you mean they made Citrons 10
Yep.
kilometres that way? You know, and with the history of Port Melbourne and Fisherman's Bend just happening over here, that's what I like about it. If it was remember we were talking about the idea of if it was just, oh, how was your rear tail light lens? Was it made in 1952 or 53? And does it have the green edge? Or
yes,
that would bore me to tears.
Yeah.
The fact that the group goes, found something odd.
Yeah. Well, that's the odd part that I like. That is the fuzziness of it. That's the fuzziness of the quirky, and which makes it interesting and why we're different to everyone else that's out there. From the perspective of all of the members are encouraged, and I actually want them to post whatever on earth you like. You know, our job is to try and help others. But the thing is, I like stuff that is the odd, the out of the ordinary, the I didn't know that, or you've got to be kidding, or we're talking to a bloke who was an accountant and going for a ride in a tank, and we're doing it at 90 degrees. And all he's told, the only instruction is hang on. So, you know, that's the quintessential part of Jive Talking Garage, which is why I had to change it from NASCO Bay, because NASCO is only Holden, and we've grown to be a little bit bigger than Holden. It started obviously just Holden, but the guys were tolerating the other bits and pieces. And to a certain degree, they still are.
Idea from this, Jules.
Yeah, go ahead.
What about if I can source a Melbourne assembled Citroen?
You're a nut.
And even with that shonky air suspension it's got Melbourne assembled, and chop that big. Oh, the Citroen purists would come after me with the tanks.
Only the French
wouldn't
people.
That be cool? Yeah, well, you know, let's not go. I've got a million French jokes, and none of them are about winning wars.
Well, they surrendered in 3 hours, didn't they?
Yeah, congratulations. Our new military weapons are from the French military. Only dropped once. Yeah. You know, French tanks got reverse gears just as fast as the Ford. You know, but yeah, something quirky like I do a Citroen.
Okay, well, Dave, we've got a couple of minutes before our time's
gets
up.
Bored and goes, what are these?
No, it's not about being bored. It's about capturing it, recording it, and putting it up there. So, you know, it's important to do that. I want to thank you. It was a pleasure to have a bit of a chat with you, to talk about motocross and about Army and about Rolls-Royce and Bentley and Citroen and Moorabbin and, you know, being chased by the French.
If anyone's got any ideas, whack them down the bottom. I'm
down there.
I'm all ears. Yep. Subscribe. Put it down the bottom. Exactly how dumb could Dave make this?
So it's really an episode that could be titled Dumb and Dumber, really, couldn't it?
Yeah, you know, and then I guess we could have the thing of it once we've decided the dumbest thing and I have it built, we could then play the game, as I was talking about my time in the Army, of going, so how stupid could we be with what we could try?
Yeah.
You know, I'm old, I'm bored. Give me a...
Well, we'll see what the comments are, but Dave Sweeney, thanks so much. Really appreciate you spending time with Jive Talking Garage, and we'll see you next time we have a bit of a chat, okay?
Beautiful. Thanks a heap, Jules.
Thank you, David.